And he really gave a summation of what Todd Blanche is and what Todd Blanche does at the Justice Department, both as the Deputy Attorney General and as the acting, and very likely now as the permanent confirmed Attorney General. The thing that really jumped out at me is something he said at the very end. The choice isn't between perfection and Mr. Blanche. It is a choice between Blanche and others who could be in that job. Him essentially saying, Senator Cassidy saying that the president here, he's not going to be controlled by an attorney general when he wants things from the Justice Department. And Blanche is in a better position than anyone else may be, given their relationship, as Blanche was Trump's personal attorney through those crucial criminal cases that the president faced both at the federal level and in New York State.
Welcome back, political drama enthusiasts. If you thought Capitol Hill was running out of plot twists, think again. Today, we're looking at the ultimate Washington conundrum. When your options aren't great, pick the one you've talked to 6 times on the phone. In this clip from CNN, key Republican Senator Bill Cassidy gives Todd Blanche's Attorney General nomination a sudden shot of adrenaline. But don't expect a glowing review. Cassidy essentially steps up to the microphone and tells the nation that while nobody is calling Mr. Blanche Professor Perfect, he's the lesser of 2 evils, so we might as well roll with it. Between senators trying to dodge endless political feud cycles and the White House desperately trying to secure a confirmed AG instead of a perpetual acting chief, this confirmation battle has everything. Grab your popcorn, because watching politicians rationalize a vote has never been this entertaining. Let's dive in.
This is not a referendum on President Trump. It is a decision regarding Mr. Blanche in very specific circumstances. All considered, I will vote for Mr. Blanche. The people of Louisiana can be assured that I worked hard to understand the issue and to make the right decision.
So I want to go to our Annie Grayer on Capitol Hill, who has been following this. I mean, Blanche has been courting senators for weeks, including Senator Cassidy, and it seems to be paying off in his favor. Annie.
That's right. Cassidy talked about how he had been talking to Blanche at least 5 or 6 times throughout this process, including an in-person meeting where Blanche came to the Hill to speak with both Cassidy and Murkowski to try and work through some of those concerns. Now, we know that despite the appeal to Murkowski, that didn't end up working out. She ended up not supporting his nomination, but Cassidy laid out on the floor a number of reasons why he felt it was important to have a Senate-confirmed Attorney General. And there was a line in his floor speech I thought was really notable, Wolf and Pamela, where he's talking about this isn't a choice between a perfect option and Mr. Blanche, that given the lesser of 2 evils, Cassidy felt like this was the best option. It was a known entity to go forward with Blanche. He felt like he could work with him after all of the different conversations that he had, after Cassidy had spoken with the attorneys from his state, as you mentioned. And this announcement from Cassidy is huge because it really does give Republicans the votes that they need to put Blanche's nomination on the floor, because as we've said, it hasn't officially been scheduled yet. Leaders were waiting to see for Cassidy's announcement, because this morning Murkowski came out and said that she could not be supporting Blanche for a number of the reasons that Cassidy laid out. Murkowski was concerned about the weaponization fund, the politicization of the Department of Justice, the way that the Epstein files had been released publicly and what had still redacted. So there was still a lot on the line here, and Cassidy coming out this morning is giving Republicans across the party a huge sigh of relief. We know the president wanted to get Blanche's nomination over the finish line, even though he was going to keep him in an acting position either way. This just gives the final confirmation that Republicans needed, that they can put this vote on the floor, even though they're going to lose Murkowski and Collins on this vote.
Yeah, good point. Kaitlan Collins is with us as well. Kaitlan, what jumped out at you from his remarks?
Now we are back to the legislative circus. Let's talk about Senator Bill Cassidy getting surprisingly emotional on the Senate floor over Todd Blanche's Attorney General nomination, and how Blanche somehow pulled off this political charm offensive. Picture this. Senator Cassidy stands up, clears his throat, and basically gives a speech that translates to, "Look, we aren't choosing between a perfect superhero and Todd Blanche. We're choosing between Blanche and total chaos." That is true Senate inspiration right there. Nothing says glowing endorsement quite like publicly declaring your candidate is the lesser of two evils. He even got emotional toward the end of his remarks, assuring the fine people of Louisiana that he wrestled with his conscience, consulted local attorneys, and ultimately decided that having a Senate-confirmed attorney general is better than letting an acting nominee float around forever. So how did Todd Blanche win him over? Was it a grand cinematic speech? Did he write him poetry? No. It was pure, unadulterated persistence. Blanche basically placed Cassidy on speed dial, calling him 5 or 6 times throughout the process, and even making a personal pilgrimage to Capitol Hill to meet with him face-to-face. While Senator Murkowski left that exact same meeting thoroughly unimpressed and promptly voted no, citing concerns over weaponizing the Justice Department and redacted Epstein files, Cassidy was sold. The secret sauce was reassurance. Blanche convinced Cassidy that he was a known entity who could actually manage the relationship with the White House. Former Attorney General Bill Barr even chimed in with his endorsement, essentially arguing that Blanche has enough of a personal rapport with the president to say no when necessary, or at least keep things from going completely off the rails. On top of that, Blanche whispered the magic words every senator wanted to hear, that the endless retaliatory prosecutions against political enemies were being dropped or dismissed. In the end, Cassidy, who isn't running for re-election anyway, decided to take the heat, ignore the incoming criticism, and give Republicans the exact vote they desperately needed to push the nomination over the finish line. It turns out that 5 phone calls, a dash of legal pragmatism, and a heavy dose of "he's the best option we've got" is all it takes to make political history.
Emotional, as we noted near the end.
He did, and he really gave a summation of what Todd Blanche is and what Todd Blanche does at the Justice Department, both as the Deputy Attorney General and as the acting, and very likely now as the permanent, confirmed Attorney General. The thing that really jumped out at me is something he said at the very end. The choice isn't between perfection and Mr. Blanche. It is a choice between Blanche and others who could be in that job. Him essentially saying, Senator Cassidy saying that the president here, he's not going to be controlled by an attorney general when he wants things from the Justice Department. And Blanche is in a better position than anyone else may be, given their relationship, as Blanche was Trump's personal attorney through those crucial criminal cases that the president faced both at the federal level and in New York State. I watched those cases up close, and Blanche did have quite a relationship with Trump. They were often very jovial at the counsel's table. They were talking back and forth. Attorney General Bill Barr, the attorney general who was the very well-known one in the first Trump administration, who had stood up to Trump when Trump wanted to push forward the idea of election fraud in 2020. Former Attorney General Bill Barr, who's still very well respected in the legal community, gave his endorsement essentially in the same way to Senator Cassidy here, saying that Blanche would be, and this is what Senator Cassidy just said, as effective as anyone else working as the Attorney General under Trump. And so that is what ended up earning this endorsement. It ended up not being just about the anti-weaponization fund or the Epstein files or any number of issues that we have heard come up that really were standing in the way. It was, will you be able to say no if the president asks you to do something that the Justice Department absolutely should not? And the Senator Cassidy here, and I imagine many Republicans are thinking, Blanche is in a better position to be able to do that than potentially anyone else who could be in the job.
He also noted his concern about DOJ bringing suits against political enemies. He said it's happened on both sides of the aisle, but he said in this administration so far, most have been dismissed or are no longer being pursued.
I'm really glad you're pointing this out, Pamela, because that actually struck me as news, in that we know that there have been cases like this dismissed. The case against James Comey, the case against Letitia James in Virginia, not the one that is currently ongoing against Comey in North Carolina. There have been others that have been dismissed. But this, what Senator Cassidy called the never-ending cycle of prosecuting enemies, he was told, if I was hearing his remarks correctly, that when he spoke to Todd Blanche, he said about 5 or 6 times during this confirmation process, and then just before his speech today, that is when Blanche would have indicated to him that some of these are dismissed or no longer being pursued. No longer being pursued to me means cases that the Justice Department indicated they may investigate, and that even the White House may want to have investigated, that they're being dropped. Although we are seeing activity of potential cases that the Justice Department could look at against political enemies of the president right now. There are 4, as far as I'm counting, referrals from Congress for obstruction of Congress against Anthony Fauci, against a key witness in the January 6th House Select Committee, Cassidy Hutchinson, and then against Jack Smith, the special counsel himself that prosecuted Trump, as well as one of his deputy prosecutors. Those things are all pending. My question now for the Justice Department is, are they not moving forward on those? What are the cases that would be dismissed?
And just to follow up on that, I mean, it stuck out to me as news as well. And one of the main points Senator Cassidy was making was that Todd Blanche would just be, for the president, an advisor, but ultimately the president's going to do what he's going to do. That's right. With Anthony Fauci and this criminal referral that would go to DOJ, specifically Janine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for D.C., Anthony Fauci was also an advisor for the president and for governors. But ultimately, it was the president and these governors who made the decisions.
On whether to close schools.
And so forth. And so it's just interesting that was a point that the senator wanted to make.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if those would be the ones that are no longer being pursued. There have been a whole laundry list. I have a large list in my office of all of the things we've heard about over the course of since the beginning of the presidency that the Justice Department may want to be prosecuting, that would be qualified as retribution cases, perhaps, or people that are political enemies. But those cases in particular, Anthony Fauci, which just yesterday we saw that he being held in contempt of Congress, that being sent to the U.S. Attorney to be looked at, that was for congressional testimony. And so there's a big question of, will there be people who served in Democratic administrations like Jack Smith or Anthony Fauci prosecuted for that? If we recall, there were 2 Republican advisors that were prosecuted and convicted and served prison time for contempt of Congress because of their testimony. That was Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon. Peter Navarro continues to appeal, but there's a question of, is that part of the never-ending cycle of prosecuting enemies that Senator Cassidy is referring to?
What caught the eye of CNN's justice correspondent, Kaitlan Collins, when Senator Cassidy took the floor to make his big announcement? First off, what really jumped out was Cassidy's remarkably candid framing of the decision. He didn't pretend Todd Blanche was some flawless constitutional scholar sent from above. Instead, he basically said, look, the choice isn't between Professor option and Mr. Blanche. Translation, we aren't choosing between a perfect superhero candidate and Todd Blanche. We're choosing between Blanche and someone potentially way worse. Collins pointed out that because Blanche served as Trump's personal defense attorney through his most high-profile trials, where they were practically dynamic duos at the defense table, Blanche actually has the unique rapport needed to stand up to the White House and say no when asked to step over legal boundaries. The second huge takeaway, and this was absolute breaking news territory, was Cassidy's take on ending the never-ending cycle of prosecuting political enemies. Collins highlighted that after 5 or 6 phone calls with Blanche, Cassidy revealed that several retaliatory cases and investigations were either being dismissed or simply no longer pursued by the Justice Department. That was a massive point of reassurance for senators worried about the DOJ becoming a weapon for political payback. In short, Collins saw a speech that traded idealized expectations for raw political pragmatism. Pick the guy who has the president's ear, can slow down political prosecutions, and is far better than whatever alternative might fill the void.
This is a notable moment, and I want to go to Kevin Liptak at the White House because it's a big one for President Trump, Kevin.
Yeah, and White House officials had obviously been watching this very, very closely. It's already now going to be a tighter vote than I think that they had hoped and expected it to be. And they were concerned because the Republicans who are now had been coming out against Blanche had been those who the president has opposed in the past. And that obviously now includes Cassidy as well, the president endorsing a rival in his primary that, as you said, effectively ended Cassidy's career. But it was was, I think, important that at the very beginning of his speech, Cassidy tried to put all of that behind him, saying that yes, he does have a history with Trump, but that it doesn't matter one bit. And the argument that seemed to resonate with him, aside from the one that Bill Barr made, which was that no one else was coming along that would be a better attorney general, was that a Senate-confirmed individual in this position would just have more leverage to get things done than an acting attorney general, because Todd Blanche could serve as acting, for perpetuity. He had already been confirmed to the deputy role, and the powers that were inflicted upon him as an acting attorney general would be no different. So he could have served in this job for the remainder of President Trump's term. But the White House, the Justice Department, and others who were advocating for Blanche were telling senators, including Cassidy, that he wouldn't have sort of the stature, the credibility, unless he was confirmed into this job. And that seemed to resonate with him very, very strongly. And he did acknowledge at one point that he would be criticized for this vote. What's new is what he said. And I'm reminded back to when he was the deciding vote for the health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Cassidy is a physician. There had been a lot of questions about whether, because of what Kennedy had said in the past, some of the conspiracy theories about vaccines, namely that he would oppose that position, and he did not. He allowed Kennedy to go through. And when he was saying that, it seemed as if it was an allusion to that past vote, for which he has been very heavily criticized. But he, again, now coming out in favor of what was a very important nomination for President Trump, and acknowledging that this would be a difficult position for him. But of course, he is someone who is not running for re-election. He does not have a political career to speak of at the moment. He probably has in his mind the idea of legacy and what he will be leaving behind as his legacy as a senator from Louisiana. And he is deciding to go in this direction, in his words, because he thinks it would put the Justice Department in a better position for the final 2 years of President Trump's term.
Crossing over to the White House, where CNN's Kevin Liptak gave us the inside scoop on how the administration was reacting to Senator Cassidy's big decision. Liptak reported that White House officials were watching this play out with bated breath. While they were thrilled to get Cassidy's vote, it was shaping up to be a much tighter confirmation than they originally hoped, especially after losing key Republicans like Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins. What really stood out in Liptak's report was the backstory between Cassidy and the administration. Even though President Trump had previously endorsed a primary rival against Cassidy, the senator put all that personal history aside. The White House managed to win him over with a key strategic argument. Having a full Senate-confirmed attorney general gives the leader of the Justice Department far more stature, credibility, and institutional leverage to get things done than someone holding an acting title forever, even though Blanche technically could have stayed in the acting role indefinitely. Liptak also pointed out that Cassidy, a physician who previously took heavy political heat for voting to confirm Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., knew he was going to take another round of intense criticism for this vote. But since Cassidy isn't running for re-election, he was focused on his legacy and doing what he believed would give the Justice Department its best chance at stability for the final 2 years of the term. That wraps up our complete look at this major confirmation turning point. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this commentary, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more political breakdowns.